In 208 AD, the Great Fire at Chibi Red Cliffs drove back the Cao Cao's massive army. History remembers the victory. Few bother to ask a harder question. When Sun Quan and Liu Bei shook hands that day, did they already know they would one day turn their swords on each other? The answer is yes, and it was precisely because they knew that they chose to ally. The true architect of this alliance was not Zhuge Liang, the silver-tongued strategist who talked the Dongwu Eastern Wu into war. Nor was it Zhou Yu, the brilliant young commander who devised the fire attack. It was a man history consistently underestimates: Lu Su. Before the Battle of Chibi II, Lu Su had already presented Sun Quan with a cold strategic calculation. Cao Cao cannot be destroyed quickly, but he can be contained. The method? Find an ally strong enough to share the burden of the northern front. Liu Bei, at that point, was a wanderer with barely 10,000 troops, the weakest player on the board. But Lu Su saw his weakness as an advantage. A weak ally could absorb pressure on the front line without threatening Dongwu's core interests in the short term. This was not trust. This was arithmetic. Liu Bei's side was equally clear-eyed. Zhuge Liang's famous Longshang plan had already charted the course: borrow Jingzhou Jing province as a foothold, seize Yichou Yi province as a base, then launch a two-pronged northern campaign. Pay attention to that word, borrow. It planted the deadliest fracture in the alliance from day one. Zhuge Liang never intended to return Jingzhou. Sun Quan never truly believed he would. The moment both sides signed their pact, they understood it for what it was: a transaction of mutual convenience, not a bond of brotherhood. After Chibi, the honeymoon ended almost immediately. Liu Bei seized 4 commanderies in southern Jinzhou, and his power expanded rapidly. Sun Quan demanded the province back repeatedly. Liu Bei stalled, promising to return it once he had taken Yizhou. He took Yizhou. He did not return Jinzhou. By 215 AD, Sun Quan's patience had snapped. He dispatched Lu Meng to seize 3 commanderies by force. The two allies stood on the brink of open war. It was Lu Su who stepped forward. On the banks of the Shang River, Lu Su and Guan Yu met face to face, a single negotiator from each side, no armies between them. This is one of the most underappreciated scenes in the entire Three Kingdoms period. Both men understood perfectly that the negotiation was not about who owned Jingde. It was about whether to keep alive an alliance that both sides knew had already begun to rot. Lu Su needed it as a shield against Cao Cao. Guan Yu needed it to protect Liu Bei's western flank. They split Jingzhou along the Xiangshui. Each side stepped back, not because they trusted each other, because they feared the same enemy. This was the hidden truth of the Sun-Liu alliance. It was never built on shared ideals. It was built on a shared threat. The moment that threat weakened, the reason for the alliance would evaporate. In 217 AD, Lu Su died of illness. He had been the last adhesive holding the pack together. His successor, Lu Meng, had zero strategic patience for Liu Bei's ambitions. In 219 AD, Guan Yu launched a northern offensive against Cao Wei's stronghold at Xianfan, leaving his rear exposed. Ramon dressed his soldiers as merchants, crossed the river in disguise, and seized Jingdou in a single strike. Guan Yu retreated to Maichon, where he was captured and beheaded. 11 years after it was forged, the Sun-Liu alliance ended in blood. Liu Bei's response confirmed everything. He did not negotiate, he did not calculate. He mobilized his entire kingdom and launched the devastating campaign at Yiling. This was not merely revenge for Guan Yu, it was the release of a man who no longer needed to pretend. With the alliance shattered, everyone returned to their most primal instinct: the fight for supremacy. Later generations often wonder, what if the Three Kingdoms had formed some kind of coalition government? Could decades of war have been avoided? But the question itself misunderstands the deepest political logic of that era. Under the concept of Tianming, mandate of heaven, there could only be one legitimate ruler under heaven. Cao Wei claimed legitimacy through imperial abdication. Shu Han claimed it through royal bloodline. Dongwu constructed its own mandate narrative. These three claims were mutually exclusive. To recognize another's legitimacy was to negate your own. This was not a disagreement that diplomacy could resolve. It was an identity deadlock. Beneath this lay something even deeper: the cultural gravity of Da Yitong, great unity. From the day Qin Shi Huang unified the warring states, the Chinese political imagination locked onto a single trajectory: the realm must be one. Division was not a legitimate arrangement, it was chaos. Unity was not a preference, it was destiny. Within this collective consciousness, maintaining a three-way coalition was not wisdom, it was cowardice. The fate of the Sun-Liu alliance was written the moment it was sealed. It was not killed by any single betrayal. It was killed by the operating logic of a civilization. On this land, alliances were never the destination, only a vehicle on the road to unification. And when the vehicle lost its use, it was discarded without hesitation.